I do. These are two of the most magical words we want to say and to hear in our lives. And when we do this, we want to make sure that we're in the right time, in the right place to avoid stress and hassle and to bring in joy and inspiration. That's what this episode of the Astrocartography podcast with Vera Luce is all about. Welcome today. It's all about weddings, planning, where to go for a destination wedding or honeymoon, and when to tie the knot. So if you're a wedding planner or you're about to get married, definitely tune into this episode. I'm so excited to share this. I have some charts and some maps for you, and you can be a complete beginner to this. And those who are listening live will explain what we're looking at on the screen on the podcast as well. So what is astrocartography? What does it mean? How can it be applied to our relationships, especially to getting married and our timing and our locations? These are big concerns, and there can be a lot of stress when we're getting married. I've been through the process. I know what it's like. And in fact, when I did this magical ceremony in Colorado many years ago, it was the biggest floods of the last 100 years the week before in Colorado. And we had to change all the plans last minute from the nice hotels that we got our family members coming into town from all over Canada and the US into these, kind of Best Western that was available because we could actually access it and it wasn't under a flood. So I know what it's like, and I want to help you with this video. Understand why you want to apply astrocartography and how it's so helpful for the timing and for location. So simply, astrocartography or locational astrology, astrocartography is one part of locational astrology, is a tool that allows us to understand the kinds of energies and the kind of influences that you and your partner have in different places in the world or the country. And so when you're getting married and you're moving to a location for that experience, you're going to have certain planetary influences there. And obviously, all of us want a wonderful marriage, an inspiring marriage, but we may want certain things from the experience, certain things from the wedding, and we may want to avoid certain things as well. And this is why this tool is so helpful. Now, just a little context. I've been doing this work for 20 years, and it's just amazing to see that in the last couple of years, it's really been picked up by big brands in the industries. Like Royal Caribbean Cruises has now hired an astrocartographer to help with their romance cruises. And Delta and Qatar Airways have also been featuring astrology-based travel. And so it's really picking up steam. It's been featured in magazines like Forbes and Vogue and National Geographic. So it's happening. And this tool is a really important tool because there's so much on the line when we're getting married. And if you're a wedding planner, you know what I mean. And so this is a tool that lets you stop guessing between 2 or 3 beautiful options and actually show a couple or for yourselves what is objectively really best for each of you. And there may be a place that's really amazing for one of you, but then really, really challenging for another. And obviously we want that harmony for everyone involved. So I'm going to show you just a little education here on this chart. So you can see an astrological chart and what these 4 angles are in astrology, because when you have planets, or planets are like different parts of your soul, they're different characters inside of you. One of the planets that we always want to pay attention to in romance and weddings is Venus. She's the goddess of love, Aphrodite, affection, beauty, right? Adornment, right? So we might want to find a place where Venus is very strong for someone. But we have to understand that each of the planets play a significant role in our lives. And they play the most significant role when they are on the angles of the chart. So I want to show you what that means. And then we're going to just kind of look through the planets. And I'm going to take you on a little tour about how these planets might affect you in a wedding location or a honeymoon location, right? And then why you'd want to consider timing. Now, just to begin with timing for a moment, this is, historically the oldest use of astrology to time events. And, we had the coronation of kings, we had the planting of crops, we had going to war, we had traveling, in ships around the world, right? But of course, we also had marriages, right? And we still do. It's an unbroken tradition in India. Um, always have been using astrology in India, but in the West, we haven't considered that so much. And actually, everything that we begin has a birth chart. And so if we start a business or if we travel or if we, open a website or we get married, we have a birth chart for that. And so a couple wants certain things from their marriage. Maybe they want to travel around the world together. Maybe they want to, have a big family, or they want to buy property around the world, or they want to start a certain kind of business and, it's about a certain topic, right? Depending on what those intentions are, we want to find the right time and the right date for the wedding that will match, what will be happening in the sky will match the intentions of the couple. And a lot of times, if we go back, we'll see that there was a lot of challenging aspects going on in the sky when a couple was getting married, and these affected them during their relationship. And so we obviously want to avoid that, and we want to try to find the best possible dates and work with a few possibilities there. So that's one aspect of the timing. And of course, as a wedding planner, you really need to consider this as well. And if you have 2 or 3 or 4 choices, if we talk about astrologically, this would really fit, this would really fit, this would be better. Maybe there's a challenge here, but we can work with that. Then you really can feel more confident moving into that date and even that time. When you say I do, is really important. The chart is changing also like hourly, we have different influences going on. And we want the wedding chart to actually harmonize with each person in the relationship. We don't want a lot of challenges between the moment of I do and, the husband's chart or the wife's chart or whoever the partners are. So this is really important, the timing. So let me show you these 4 angles. And as I do that, I want to also show you the planets. And we're just going to take a walk through of who these guys are in the sky that are influencing us so much. And here you're going to see one of my softwares. And this is the chart of one of our old favorite performers and musicians, Prince. And we're going to look at Prince's maps as well and give like a theoretical analysis of if Prince was coming for, an astrocartography reading for his wedding, where we might want to do that and potentially not do that. So just so you can see here, so I'm on the maps. I'm looking at the very top of a birth chart, and this is something called the Midheaven, MC. And this is what we're known for. This is our reputation. And in a wedding, I mean, this would be the vibe that everyone feels. This would be like the collective energy, what people might remember from the event. It's really important that the flavor of the wedding, can be encompassed by the planet and then the signs that might be in this part of the chart. And for instance, here, Prince was born with the planet Pluto on his angle of career. Well, he was very Plutonian. He pushed people's boundaries, and Pluto is a planet that is cathartic, sometimes intense, very dramatic, very sexual, very magnetic and alluring, and even changed his name. And like that's a complete transformation that Pluto represents. So now, typically, like as an example, that's not something we would really want in a lot of marriages. We wouldn't want Pluto, which is pretty intense and sometimes, very volatile or like, there's some kind of shadowy stuff going on with Pluto that is not what we want from a marriage. So we would probably want to avoid that one. But just so you can see that this is the vibe, this is what people are going to feel from the wedding, and what it's going to be remembered or known as. And then if you look over here, So actually, let's look down here. So we're looking at the opposite point called the IC. This is the roots of the chart. Okay. And this is the area of the home and the family. And now in a wedding, this could be very much what's going on with the families that are there. And just to stay with Pluto for a moment, if we had Pluto there, we don't want to have Pluto there because we could be processing some family issues, right? Or some ancestral thing or some, dark secret of the past, and we just don't want to deal with that. And just typically, we would probably want to avoid very strong Pluto as a whole in a location. But the angle of the home would definitely affect what's going on in the family situation and even like in the area itself, what's going on in the region we're getting married. Like what's the energy of the space itself. Now, if we come to this other angle, so I'm looking at the left-hand part of the chart, this is the rising sign. This is where the sun would be rising, and it's called the ascendant. And then the opposite sign and house and area is the descendant. And so the ascendant is very important for a person in a location and in a wedding because this is how the individual feels. It's their personality. It's the energy they're giving off. It's like what's moving through them. What's how I feel, like how I'm giving radiance to the world, like I'm radiating this energy. And sometimes in a location we'll have a planet there and sometimes we won't. But if we do, it's going to be front and center with our energy. Okay? And we're going to go through a number of examples of these. But imagine you have Venus rising, and I will show you that I had that in a location in a moment. You're going to feel like the goddess, like this great feminine energy, this loving, affectionate, open-hearted, just very much in this feminine energy that is all about love and attraction and magnetism. That would usually be one of the best planets to have on your rising sign. Now, if you have, let's say, the planet Uranus on the ascendant, Uranus, this is a planet that is actually, very eccentric, wild, surprising, and at times chaotic or anxious or nervous. Uranus is like a bolt of electricity going off, right? Well, for some couples, maybe you might want Uranus rising. Like if you really want to feel like you're the one expressing this real wild, crazy, rebellious energy, okay, this is the intention, right? So we have to know your intention as a couple with the marriage and with the vibe you want to give off. And obviously as a wedding planner, all of that comes in as well. But for most people, probably having Uranus rising is going to bring this kind of tension, and it's anxiety feeling. It's nervous, like can't sit still, and you want to feel relaxed, right? You want to feel at ease. And Uranus moves very fast too, so it could feel like, ooh, like just a bit overwhelmed to the system or shock to the system. So again, if Uranus was on the opposite angle, the descendant, this is the angle of partnership, actually, relationships. And this is very important, obviously, because the whole journey of weddings is partnership. And so this would represent each partner's partner, the other person. So again, you want to have really supportive planets here. If it's Uranus on this angle for the partner, the other person, right, might get really nervous or anxious. But if you have Jupiter maybe on the angle of partnership, then we can sense that like the whole vibe is like, wow, I feel so inspired, so positive, so optimistic. This is the nature of Jupiter, expansive. Well, yeah, if that's on the angle of partnership for one or both parties in a location, that's beautiful. That's usually going to be really, really supportive for what we're trying to do in a wedding, right? So I hope that makes sense. We've looked at the 4 angles, talked about a few examples. I'm going to give a few more. But while I'm on the maps, I want to show you this map right here. Okay, so this is one of the softwares we work with. And for the podcast, I'm using something called Solar Maps. And this is my own map going through Colorado. And what's interesting in Colorado is that I have the planet Venus rising, meaning, again, as we said, it's something that I was emanating or giving off the whole time I was there. But again, if it was just a marriage, we just went there for a destination wedding or a honeymoon, I would be wearing Venus on my surface. I'd be wearing the costume of that goddess. Um, and so, yes, I did attract a few relationships when I was there, but what I wanted to say was, I did actually do 2 hand fasting ceremonies. One of them was an official marriage, but it was still a hand fasting, which is the old pagan tradition of actually where we get the word tying the knot. It comes from hand fasting, where we'd actually tie the hands together, and yeah, so the time that I was there, I had 2 partners that I did this hand fasting ceremony with. And I point that out to share that, Venus locations in general, like we can both attract love. Love can be a major theme. And in this case, it was also a commitment theme for me too. And this is Venus, right? Goddess of love and marriage. And so that's one of the most significant things. Now, I also, like I said, I did this ceremony, and I have another planet here, which is Neptune. And this is a great planet to talk about in terms of weddings, because Neptune, I have it on the angle of partnership. Neptune is a planet that rules the imagination and dreams and spirituality and magic. And so I'm going to pull up an image of the planets now so everyone can see. So when Neptune is strong in a location and we're thinking, is this a good place for us to get married, for me as an individual or my partner? Then we want to think about the fact that there's a lot of magic that we can feel when we get married under a Neptune influence. It can be almost cinematic. It can be very romantic or enchanted at times. And if you want to get married by water, and you have a Neptune line, that's also really good because Neptune was the god of the oceans. And there's something where, we're coming together for this sacred union, right? And Neptune is a planet that dissolves boundaries. And so, it's actually a really beautiful planet to consider in a location for a marriage. And the challenge, and every planet has a challenge, if Neptune is strong in a location, is there could be too much drinking. That's for sure, because again, Neptune dissolves boundaries, and drinking, smoking, whatever is happening, that can definitely go down. So that would be one thing to consider. Neptune can rule addictions, but anything that's escapist. But in a way, most marriages, we want to feel a bit of that fantasy, right? A bit of that escape into the magic, and hopefully that can be the seed planting, right, of this kind of rapturous, glorious state that we could live in a marriage, and that we can remember for the rest of our lives. And yeah, so I had Neptune in that location, Colorado. It was so fascinating because the day before the actual marriage ceremony, there was this beautiful rainbow that appeared, like after the rain, right? And like literally the night before, and it was during the rehearsal dinner, and it was such a beautiful sign too, because when we had met this partner, like when we first hugged each other, this partner said that they saw rainbows when we were hugging, and so it was just this beautiful like synchronicity and serendipitous moment. And that's very Neptune. Neptune rules kind of this like larger, almost like angelic orchestration of everything, right? And so, yeah, this can be the influence of Neptune. But yeah, so a great line as well for honeymoons, right? When we're doing our honeymoon planning, yeah, we want to have enchantment and magic and fantasy and all of these just kind of beautiful spiritual magical experiences, right? And so that can be generally one of the planets we might want to work with in finding the best locations for weddings. Now, just a couple more examples. And I'll look at Prince's chart, and also Madonna's. So stay tuned for that, as if they were getting married. But just a couple more examples, to introduce you to these other planets so you can see the different kinds of experiences. I want to talk about Saturn because Saturn is really important, beautiful planet, right? But Saturn can be kind of heavy, but actually not something we want to avoid like in a wedding or marriage, but we want to know that that's happening there because what Saturn can do is there's a sobering quality with Saturn in a location. Now, if Saturn is on the angle of partnership for someone, then the partner would feel this Saturn, like they may feel more serious. And okay, that's something we might consider. Like they may not feel as like magical, right? And like playful or up. They may feel like, whoa, this is a really, I'm making this very serious commitment. And that's okay. The truth is you are, but we want to know that that's happening. And if it's very different than the partner, we want to consider that. And let's say Saturn was on the angle of career, right? This reputation. Well, the vibe of the ceremony, how it's seen publicly, can feel more formal or dignified, or it could be taken more seriously. So if you want that feeling of like, the bones of this relationship, like we're really committed. This is we're doing this, and it's got this just real gravitas to it. Then if Saturn is on the angle of career, great. Now let's compare that or contrast that, let's say, to the sun. If the sun is on the angle of career, now the sun, of course, radiating, it's life force, it's vitality, it's vibrancy, right? And if that is on the area of the public or what people are receiving from the marriage, it feels like there's just radiant celebration, right? Or it's like very playful. It's like there's lots of music and dance and everyone's having the best time of their lives. The sun, right? We feel alive there, right? Like the Saturn feels a lot more like grounded and kind of like, just a more serious tone. So again, it really depends on the couple and what they're wanting, right? And this is really helpful as a wedding planner to know this, right? Because we have different intentions when we are going to that wedding or for that honeymoon, for instance, right? So I want to mention Mars too, because Mars is really important and it could be pretty challenging a bit in a wedding location because Mars is a planet of conflict, and we don't want that at a wedding, or on a honeymoon. Very important, right? So if you have Mars on your ascendant and you are wearing that energy, you might feel like really restless, might feel a bit aggressive or competitive, not things we want, or combative, and so I would generally say that Mars could be a pretty difficult planet. It would give you a lot of energy and you'd be very bold, but it feels a little edgy, right? To bring that into a wedding ceremony, right? Um, unless like a couple's like, we're going to go whitewater rafting and like, we're going to get married like on the river, like something like that, like that kind of fits that adventurous spirit of, that sounds pretty fun. That fits that spirit of Mars, like young, aggressive, daring. We're going to jump out of the plane and say, I do, while we're like falling, 5,000 meters or whatever it is. So yeah, and then like the moon. Well, the moon is a planet of emotions. It's soft. It is a family of the a planet of the family. And like if the moon is on the angle of the home, man, that can feel like just the whole family is just like so emotionally connected to this couple. It feels deeply nourishing and nurturing. Probably the space itself feels really like supportive, comfortable. That's a very moon word, comforts, right? And yeah, there may be more emotions in the field. During if the moon is powerful for one party of the couple, but generally we would think that that would be pretty supportive. Now there's something to say about all of this, which is that there is no black and white here, and what we have to do when we look at charts is we have to go much deeper than just a planetary line and what it symbolizes. We need to understand how that planet is working in each person's chart in the couple. So it's not just a moon line. If the moon is opposite Pluto, then that emotion might be a very intense emotion. It may be maybe something buried even or dark, and challenging. And so then we're like, ooh, maybe we don't want to be right on that moon line for a wedding, right? So we have to consider the whole chart of each person. And this is the narrative. We call it aspects in astrology. What's the sort of psychological dynamics of each part of the chart? So that's very, very important. And that would be true for any planet. We want to consider the entire story of that, right? So we start with the general nature of the planets, what they might mean on the angles for each person, and then go deeper into the actual dynamics going on there. So you can see it's very rich. There's a lot of material to explore in a location. That's why I love working with couples on this level, because it's just like this is the biggest decision of your life, at least one of them, and you want to have confidence moving forward. So let's take a couple minutes. Let's look at Princes and Madonnas, just so you get another quick example, and then we can wrap it up with a couple themes here. So share the screen. We're going to go back to my charts so you can see this. And I just wanted to use this fun example because, so that's mine. So let me come back here and we're going to just pull this up 1 second. So we are pulling up Prince's maps, and there we go. And then after that, we'll look at Madonna. And let's just say that Prince came and was like, oh yeah, I really want to get married in the Mayan Riviera, like Tulum. I feel like that might be like a very Prince location these days. A lot of sexy vibes and people dancing from all over the world, right? Well, it is a Pluto line for Prince, a Pluto influence. And actually, this whole area between, I'm looking at the map of Mexico for those listening on the podcast. And there's a moon influence and there's Pluto on the angle of career over here, more like Villahermosa in Oaxaca a bit, and also in sort of where Palenque is, the great Mayan temples. So I would say, well, if you want to have this very like kind of, it's Prince. So like there might be like, a really sexy party happening afterward that could fit Pluto, right? It's like alluring and seductive and, the dark goddess or dark god type of vibe. That would be the energy. It's Pluto, the lord of the underworld, the lord of shadows. So, you can rock that, Prince, but also like it might be a bit intense, or there may be some dramatic things going on. Or like for a wedding, like is there someone untrustworthy there? Maybe some items can be stolen. I've worked with many clients who've had things stolen from them, their wallets, and had some threatening experiences on Pluto lines. And I'd be like, even though you can work with Pluto because you have Pluto on your angle of career, Prince, I don't know if you want to do that. But I would say let's if you can get out of Mexico, I really like this coast over here in excuse me, in North Carolina. And that's because there's a lot of the planets we've been talking about that bring inspiration, joy, magic, love, heart-centeredness. Um, Jupiter's going down through this Wilmington, a beautiful kind of surf and great coastal area down here in North Carolina. As you go up a little bit, you have right in the Virginia border, we actually have Venus, you know, and these lines are called local space lines. They're curving around the circumference of the Earth, and they're actually the directions of the planets when we were born. So if we pointed for Prince and pointed in the direction of Venus and then in Neptune just underneath, and in the direction of the nodes, which are very significant karmic and destiny lines, those are also going through here. And like, wow, Venus, Jupiter, Neptune, and uh, the nodes. And then look at this line. We have this big line going through like all New York and down into Florida. This is Mercury on the angle of partnership. We didn't talk about Mercury before, but Mercury does rule contracts, the god of trade, and information. And so we are signing a contract on that line. I would say this is like, somewhere on this coast, there's a lot happening here that feels really like destined around love and relationships and, a magic experience. And I would kind of choose this location if we could. Of course, then we have to say, well, what's going on with these planets in your chart, Prince? And then we have to interpret that, right? And break that down so that you're prepared when going there for the energies you might feel in that honeymoon or in that wedding. Now, let's just say that, Prince was going to get married to one of our other favorite pop stars from the 80s, Madonna. And so in Madonna's chart, she could, if we come down to Mexico, she also has this Pluto influence in Mexico. But she has the sun rising. Let's just look at this. This is really quite cool. She has the sun rising down through Oaxaca area here. Like, I'm seeing like, you want to go like have a marriage for Day of the Dead in Oaxaca, where like the ceremony like originates from, really. And you want to do a performance, because the sun rising is like you are seen, you are visible, you are like shining star, like lucky star, superstar, Madonna. And so this is right here, right? Like in this part of Mexico. But then Prince, he has that Pluto and that he has Moon, but the Pluto, we're like, can he roll with that Pluto? And then we have to talk about that. But maybe Madonna's like loving this. If she wanted to follow that sun line up, where would it be? Well, kind of like maybe there's something like in Austin or like we're not on Texas exactly here. There's Austin. And right where the sun is rising, there's a Neptune influence pretty strong. Magic, enchantment, and Jupiter's not that far away. Even the nodes bringing some of that destiny we talked about. There is a Mars influence here, so we have to watch with some of that, edgy, combative energy. But overall, this might work pretty well if we wanted to have like a Texas marriage, just to say. So, there's a lot of things we can look at. And one of the other important things in this work is something called cyclocartography. And this is really important for wedding planners because we can look at that location or those many locations at a certain time. So that's very important because a couple is usually only going for a wedding for maybe they're there a week or 3 days, and a honeymoon, the same thing, right? A short amount of time. And so the permanent energies are very important. But then we also have the forecasting or the cycles over that area. And both of these factors are really, really significant. So this would be something we would really want to consider is both the permanent energies of each person, and we want to look at the forecasting or the cyclocartography, what's happening at the time they would be there. And this is how we can also choose not only generally the best date and time, but what is happening in that location at that date and time. And you could see there's a lot of layers going on here. And that's why it's helpful, right? All these influences are happening, whether you're aware of them or not. But once we do a reading or a consultation like this, then we can really see all of the factors at play, and we get a vocabulary, right, for navigating this as both a wedding planner helping the couple and as the couple going through it, so you can be prepared. And it's not to make you afraid. If you're really committed to somewhere, that's fine. You still want to be prepared for what's there, and then work with the best energies that you can in that location and feel confident about that, feel ready and excited. And you don't want to have all these other chaotic factors going on. You want to feel like, okay, I'm ready. And maybe there's some Uranus weirdness or craziness going on. And how do we want to work with that? Like, how can we bring that into the ceremony, right? Or like, yeah, with Neptune, we got some cousins that like to drink too much a lot of times, and like being aware of like that might be in the field. We don't want that to like really like get in the way of our ceremony, So how do we deal with that? These are just different things you might want to consider, right? Because you want that experience to be really magical and meaningful. And that's the thing, like these places will have different meanings for you. So I hope this has been really helpful, really inspiring, open up some new possibilities, so open up some new doorways to step through. And if you're interested in this as a couple or as a wedding planner to integrate this, let's get in touch and we can look at your astrolocality, locational astrology maps, and really pinpoint some of the best locations in the world for you. So I got some other videos also about Venus lines. Again, very good for love. Jupiter lines, very good for expanding, feeling growth, feeling successful. And those will be linked as well. So we will tune in to you next time. Thanks for tuning into the podcast as well. And stay tuned for more astrocartography and human design with Verdelus. Take care. Happy weddings. Happy trails. Love.